Welcome back, MBA students. This is Dr. Ron Kapp, once again in week 2 of 5420 at Antioch University, the healthcare sector as a complex system. This week, we're going to talk about physicians. The physician really does play the starring role. And I think one of the greatest things we have going for us is the mighty stethoscope. Everyone wears a stethoscope. It's a sign of privilege, a sign of status. It tells the patient who we are. Yes, who we are. Well, physicians do play that role, but we're just one part of the complex system. Now, maybe you too would like to become a doctor. Well, in that respect, I have Dr. Kapp's 6-step quick guide to becoming a doctor. Number 1, go to college. Step 2, go to medical school. Step 3, pick a specialty. Step 4, complete your residency. 5, get a state license. And the final step, get a job. See, it's not really that hard, is it? I wish. Unfortunately, it does take quite a few years, as you well know. Typically, college is 4 years. Medical school is usually 4 more years. The shortest residency is 3 years. Some people go as long as 7 years. I didn't get my first job really until I was 34 years old. I did not receive a paycheck as a physician until that age. So that's what's called delayed gratification. We do delay it a lot. But because of that, physicians are a very strange group of people. I think you probably already know that. And my job this week is to explain that a little better of why we are such a strange group of people. We'll get into that in more depth throughout this course, but right now let's focus on the meaning of what it means to be a physician. This is Oliver Sacks. He wrote a book in 1985. I reread it back then. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. I don't remember it because it was so long ago, but I do know it was a fantastic book. And what Dr. Sacks said was the examination, the patient gives us that wisdom about life. You know, we're doing a job, but when you translate that job into what I'm really doing, it makes me a wise old physician. Well, let me tell you a story. You know, in these PowerPoints, I like to tell stories. I was at a small hospital, a rural hospital, 1 room, 1 bed, 1 nurse, 1 doctor. It was 3 a.m. in the morning. No one was there but my nurse and myself. A young man walked in, very, very strange looking. He didn't blink. He didn't look at us. He just walked in, walked straight to the gurney, laid down and stared straight up at the gurney, at the ceiling above the gurney. His first words to us were, "I'm going to hurt someone." Well, that didn't make my nurse or myself feel very good. 3 a.m., nobody's there. We have no security guard. The phone is on the other side of the room. I can't get to that to call 911. And then he repeats it again without blinking, without looking at us, staring straight at the ceiling. "Yes, I'm going to hurt someone right now." Well, I was the physician on duty, of course, and in my infinite wisdom, I wasn't sure what to do. So I asked this young man, I said, "Sir, would you like some medicine to make you feel better?" He thought about it for a few seconds without blinking, without staring or changing his stare at the ceiling, and he said, "Yeah, medicine." So my nurse, who was already had been drawing up some Haldol to give this man an injection to calm him down. She and I think alike. We're a team, remember, the team approach. And I'm looking at him, and he's still staring at the ceiling, and he hasn't blinked yet. So in my infinite wisdom, because like Dr. Sachs, I know a lot, I said to this young man, "Sir, would you like to see my dog, Peptide?" That's my dog's name. I said, "Sir, would you like to see my dog, Peptide?" He thinks about it for a few seconds and says, "Yeah." My nurse, of course, is looking at me like, what's wrong with this guy? Then I replied to this young man, "Sir, my dog is out in the truck. If you give me a couple minutes, if that's okay with you, I will go out and get my dog, bring Peptide back in here, and that's what I'll do." Well, my nurse, of course, is looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm going to leave her alone with the crazy man. I want to get out of this room, go get my dog. So I do. I go out. He says, "Yeah." So I go out. I wake up my dog who's been sleeping. It's a yellow Labrador, best dog ever. Wags starts, immediately wags her tail. You know what a yellow lab is like. So I put Peptide on the leash, and we go back into the ER as fast as we can. I screech my heels at the door and stop with the dog. And I'm thinking now, oh man, what have I done? He's going to kill my nurse. He's going to kill me. And now he's going to kill my dog. Yeah, they're going to find us in the morning in a pool of blood. Great wisdom, Dr. Ron. Nonetheless, I walk in the room with my dog, who's still, yellow lab-like, wagging her tail. Well, this young man was still staring at the ceiling. He hadn't budged. He hadn't flexed a muscle. He hadn't blinked in all the time I was gone. My nurse was still staring at him, staring at me, wondering what to do. I walked a little closer as I inched closer to this young man, wondering what would happen. In a flash, like Superman, he leaps off the bed like a crazed man, grabs my dog around the neck, and starts hugging my dog, kissing my dog. He looks up at me with tears running down his cheeks. And he says, "I love this dog. I want one just like her. This is the best dog in the world." I said, "Well, that's Peptide." He says, "I want one." He said, "Doctor, I don't need that medicine anymore." And you know what? He didn't. We never gave him his Haldol. Now, the point of the story, this is part one of a story, in fact. The point of the story is sometimes you don't have to have the smarts of the most brilliant doctor. So I like my job. I think most doctors like their job. Well, maybe not. This slide that I just put up, the Medscape survey. Medscape is a doctor type website that we get quite often. They came out in 2021. Would I choose medicine again? Well, yes, I would. But you know what? It depends on the day. A lot of people say yes, they would. You've also read in the newspapers a lot of people wouldn't. A lot of doctors would not choose medicine again. 22%. They wouldn't go through that 4 years of college, medical school, residency, all those years of training. But it really depends on the day, on how things are going. And it's that day, the day that we're having of how we answer these questions. So you have to take surveys in stride. Surveys don't always provide the best data. You ask the question on a survey why they do it. What is the most rewarding part of the job of being a doctor? Well, I was surprised by these numbers. Maybe you're not, but I am. Making the world a better place. We all say this, but we don't think about it all the time. 26%, that was rather low. A gratifying relationship with patients, that's really the reason why we do it. We love our patients, and only 26% pulled on that survey. Good at what I do? I love what I do. I'm an emergency room doctor, as I told you last week. And what I do is I fix people very quickly, somehow. I bring in Peptide, maybe. Yes, that's a good story, wasn't it? But that is the gratifying part. I thought it was a little sad about the money part, making good money at a job that I like. Only 12%? I'm not sure that's true. I think it's higher. I think now we delayed our years of gratification. We want to make more money. And it's sad to say that. At the end of this slideshow, I will show you a few slides on how much money we can or do make at times. And the last one, being proud of being a doctor. Yeah, that's a tough one. Some doctors want to be on a pedestal. I don't like those doctors. But I think that's what I think counts. But again, it depends on the day. It depends on the doctor. It depends on the specialty. Why we do it. It's a very interesting question to contemplate. And as an MBA, I think I would ask you the same question, and I did last week. Why do you want to be in this class? Why do you want to be an MBA student? Now, some of the common challenges that we run into as physicians, again, it's dependent on the day, but we really detest all the rules and regulations. Only 23%? I don't think so. It's higher. Work long hours? Yeah, we don't mind. Physicians are type A, obsessive compulsive, and I'll say it, they're a little bit crazy. We like long hours. We like to suffer. We really do. 14%, it's pretty low. That's about right. Dealing with difficult patients, that's real challenging. Patients expect different things. They have different priorities. They have different expectations than the physician, than the healthcare provider team, than the entire system that we're talking about. So that's a tough one. I think it's probably higher than 14%. Getting fair reimbursement from insurance companies and Medicare is definitely higher than 12%, which is sad. Working with the EHR, electronic health records. You can remember those letters, EHR. We detest electronic health records. I know of no physician who likes it. I do not believe, and I think most physicians do not believe, that EHR have bettered patient care. They do not improve patient care. Now, that would be a great forum discussion question for this course of 5420. But we detest EHRs. It does not make us happy. We do worry about being sued. I don't think we worry about being sued as we're talking to patients, but we worry about it when we go home that night and say, oh boy, I hope I don't get sued for that one. So those are some of the common challenges that we run into, something to think about as an MBA. When you're talking to your doctors at your facilities in the future, you might want to refer back to this slide. Yes, this doctor's under pressure, maybe regulation pressures, maybe long hour pressures, maybe difficult patient pressures, maybe the attorney has sent a deposition. I have never been in a court for a defendant for myself, knock on wood there, but I worry about it. I worry about it a lot. And someday I'll tell you about the one letter I received, but not today. This is not what I want to talk about today. But what's most interesting is where we get our doctors and who the doctors are in America. So we're going to talk about that next. I outlined already to you the pathway to become a doctor, college, medical school, residency. Well, I want to give you some numbers. You do not need to memorize these numbers, so sit back and think about the concepts. First-year residents, commonly called interns, those are the new doctors into the pipeline. Every year, July 1st, about 34,000 doctors enter the pipeline. Last year was 33,594. The three biggest specialties, called primary care specialties, are internal medicine, family practice, and pediatrics. And you can see the numbers. Out of those 33,000 that enter last year, 10,000 were in internal medicine, 4,000 in family practice, and another 3,000 in pediatrics. That's about half going into primary care. The other ones, of course, go into specialty type programs. Now, these data are from the 2020 American Association of Medical Colleges, the Liaison Committee of Medical Education, and the ACGME for graduate medical education. Very, very reputable data, and the take home is about 34,000 every year. It's increasing. When I went in, it was about 18,000, so we're making more now. But they go into these different specialties. In academic year, and I'll just read this, in academic year 2019, there were approximately 12,000 ACGME accredited residency and fellowship programs in 182 specialties and approximately 865 sponsoring institutions. You don't need to know those numbers. What you need to know is there are about 145,000 to 150,000 active full and part-time residents and fellows. These are student doctors. They have an MD from medical school, but they're in a residency program or a fellowship training program. Do you know what that means? That's 1 out of 7 active physicians in the United States is a resident or fellow. Do you remember the Flexner report from week 1, 1910? Abraham Flexner, nice guy. He said residency training programs must be attached to university medical centers of some sort. He was doing the, improvement of our specialty, of our profession. Wow. So these academic medical centers are where all these residents work. Not always are they in academic medical centers, but most of them are. Or they have some type of affiliation with it. So that's 150,000 young residents, young students. They're getting paid. They're making some money, which is nice, but not enough. Not enough to live on. So that's an interesting statistic, that 145, 150,000, something to wrap your head around, to think that's a lot of people training and taking care of patients at the same time. Now, the real pipeline for real doctors, people out in the real world, those people that you see on the street that you would deal with, that pipeline of residents and fellows. I want to talk about that, 145, 150,000. Only 61% are U.S. medical school graduates. 16% are DO graduates, Doctor of Osteopathic Medical Schools. We have 2 types of medical schools in America, the allopathic MD pathway and the osteopathic DO pathway. They're equal. They both do the same residencies. They both practice the same medicine. The osteopaths, as you probably know, have a more hands-on approach. They're more practical oriented than the allopathic MD types like myself. And what's most interesting that you probably are not aware of, the international medical graduates, called IMGs. We used to call them foreign medical graduates, but they're really IMGs. They're 23% enter that pipeline every year, and that's increasing. There are the schools in the Caribbean, which are wonderful schools. They create great doctors. They enter the same residency programs that our doctors do. And they're training in 12,000 different programs across our country. Some phenomenal numbers there, really, if you think about it. But they're not all U.S. doctors. They're not all MDs. So that's something to keep in mind when you're talking to your physician in whatever facility you're at as an MBA, probably their boss, by the way. You'll be able to understand a little bit of their training background. And I think that's important to know, to understand the system of medicine that you're entering. But truly, your real doctor in the small hospitals or in the private hospitals or in the clinics or perhaps in the other areas, the walk-in clinics, everywhere else, they're different. Internal medicine, they make up 120,000 in the real world. Family practice, 120,000. Pediatrics, another 60,000 or so. And these numbers change all the time. Just depends who's alive, who's dead, who's entering, who's leaving, who's retiring, who's not working, who is working. Overall, in America, the physician supply is about 36% female, although entering the pipeline is 1:1 male to female ratio. And overall, about 45% are age 55 or older. That's pretty amazing, I think, because look at the implications. If they're age 55 or older, as an MBA, I think you can calculate, ooh, they're going to be retiring soon. Then what happens? Well, you got those 33,000 entering every year, so it's okay. It gets complicated, doesn't it? Not really. Here's where it gets complicated. Yes, this is the complicated part, the physician specialties. The American Board of Medical Specialties. There are 24 specialty boards by the American Board of Specialty. And those are the real boards that control what we do. If you're a cardiologist, a dermatologist, an OB-GYN specialist, a surgeon, maybe a cardiothoracic surgeon, a neurosurgeon, you're an emergency medicine person, whatever. Wow, that's a lot of boards, 24. They take tests, we take continuing medical education, things we have to do. In America, in the United States, right now, there are about 1,900,000, 938,980 exact to be exact, active physicians, but only about 800,000 are in direct patient care. There are another 12,000 in teaching, another 12,000 in research, another 96,000 doing other things like myself, teaching MBA students or doing telehealth, telewellness, this and that. So it's a big pool of physicians. We play the starring role. We wear that stethoscope around our neck. But this is the true number, the magnitude of the number. So think of it as about 800,000 practicing doctors trying to take care of everyone. That's a lot of doctors. When you are certified by these specialty boards, you have different pledges, not just the Hippocratic Oath that you learned about last week from Hippocrates, do no harm, let food be thy medicine. They take a fellowship or a physician type pledge. And you can read this at your leisure if you so desire, but there's only two that I want to talk about. In the middle, I pledge to pursue the practice of surgery, because this is the American College of Surgeons, with honesty and to place the welfare and the rights of my patients above all else. Wow, there's a forum discussion question for an MBA course. The second one is another paragraph down. I will take no part in any arrangement or improper financial dealings that induce referral, treatment, or withholding of treatment for reasons other than the patient's welfare. These are key pledges that we take, that we believe in, and that would be a very interesting forum discussion, wouldn't it? Yes, if you want to become a doctor, you will take one of those pledges. So, that was my introduction of that's how you become a doctor. But the question is, why does an MBA student at Antioch have to understand doctor training? Well, to understand training, and when you know a little bit about their training, because you have to work with these people. Remember, it's the team approach. The doctor's the individual, but it's the team approach. Doctors think differently based on their different specialties, and doctors have different goals based on their specialty. Remember from week 1, we talked about the individual, and then we talked about the team approach to medicine. Well, pathologists think one way, radiologists think another. Emergency medicine physicians like myself think, well, let me go get the dog, if the dog can help you out. So let me give you some morphine, see if that'll help you out. That's key to understand as an MBA. And if you don't understand that, you start running into some friction. Big friction. So that's what we're trying to alleviate here when you see that. Yes, it is true. Doctors play that starring role. We're cool. Patients think doctors equal healthcare. Healthcare equals wellness, which is everyone's goal. Yeah, everyone's goal. Okay, let me tell you part 2 of the peptide story, just to break it up, because you're getting a little sick. Oh boy, all this money stuff. You remember the peptide story I just told you. Part 2. Several years later, I'm at Yosemite National Park, medical director at the hospital clinic there. At Yosemite, we have ambulances, we have air helicopters, we have a big park medic program to take care of people. Well, again, late at night, an ambulance finds a patient and brings them to us. Lights and sirens, lots of park medic rangers, these are federal officers, are there with the ambulance. They call me from my little house above the clinic, and I walk down in the middle of the night, a little bit groggy. I see the lights and sirens. I see all the police rangers. Guns are drawn. The ambulance is being rocked back and forth. I increase my pace down the steps. What is going on here? I look in the ambulance, and there's a man at the back of the ambulance. No shirt, sweating profusely, mumbling garbled words. And he's huge. He's 6'6" if he's an inch. He's 350, 400 pounds. His shirt is off. Sweat is drenching down his face. He's just screaming, blah, 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 blah. I can't understand a word. The Rangers have their guns drawn. They have everything's there. They're ready to shoot this guy. I'm like, oh man, this man is so out of control. He's shaking the ambulance. He's shaking the ambulance. I thought the ambulance was going to turn over. This guy is huge. He's in the back of the ambulance. The Rangers can't get him out. He won't come out. They want to shoot him. They called me. They said, Doc, you got to dart him. I'm thinking, dart him? What do you mean? Doc, sedate him. They want some Versed, Haldol, Benadryl to sedate this guy. I said, well, yeah, I'm thinking really fast now. I'm starting to wake up because this guy looks dangerous. He's huge. He's like a monster in there. The ambulance is going to flip over. The Rangers are going to shoot this poor guy. I said, wait a minute. I have an idea. Yes, I had an idea once again. Remember, this is part 2 of a story. I said, Sir, would you like to see my dog? You see, I had flashbacks of Peptide helping people. I thought, well, maybe, Peptide's up in the house. I said, sir, I will get my dog. Would you like to see my dog? He stops. He stops shaking the ambulance. He stares straight at me. He says in the clearest voice ever, what is wrong with you, doctor? Are you some kind of weirdo? You're crazy. I don't want to see your dog. I never want to see your dog. I don't want to see your dog. You're nuts. Well, he goes back to shaking the ambulance right to where it was. But he was 100% lucid. He knew exactly who I was. And he had the logic in his brain to say, no, I don't want to see your dog. Well, I tried. So that's part 2 of the peptide story. And this is how doctors play the starring role. I was the star and I got out my dog. It didn't work that time. The Rangers thought I was a nut. We eventually darted the poor fellow. And he turned out okay. He turned out to be a very nice man. That's the way it goes. We play the starring role. Okay, back to the course. Spending. Yes, we spend a lot of money in healthcare. I think I mentioned it last week, $3.5 trillion approximately. As I said, it's more. 20% of our GDP. That's more than the GDP of any other country except China, Japan, and Germany. It's huge. And the average amount spent is $9,600. That was 2016 data. It's much more now. It keeps going up, 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 up. It keeps increasing. Now, doctors get their money from insurance plans primarily. But here are some statistics that are phenomenal to me. And I think you should appreciate them you will appreciate them as an MBA student. The employer-provided health insurance rose 37% between 2015 and 2020, from $15,000 to $21,000. Now that's the average annual premium for family coverage as the employee. The employer is paying all this money. Now, if the employer wasn't paying all that money for each person who's employed in that company, usually greater than 100 people, small companies don't need to provide insurance, by the way. We'll talk more about this in the insurance week. That money could be money going into your pocket. Ooh, another forum discussion. Data number 2, Affordable Care Act marketplace, because we buy insurance on the open market, rose 97% between 2015 and 2020, from 8,000 to 17,000. That's incredible. Now, we thought the Affordable Care Act, what we call Obamacare, you remember that, it increased 97%. Now, it is true, we get a discount as we talked about, and we'll talk about that more, but this is where we get our money from. And what's sad, we all now are talking about COVID recently. We think it's decreasing. Let's hope there's not a fourth wave. We'll talk about that later and see what happens. 70% of the physicians in America report that they are seeing less patients during the pandemic. Another forum discussion if you want, but fewer patients, what does that mean? Well, we don't know what that means, but one of the things it could mean is, yes, there will be more diagnoses and more patients in the near future when the pandemic ends. And this is 2020 data from the AMA, Kaiser, and Blue Cross. You know a lot about Blue Cross Blue Shield now from last week. You see, it all fits together. I don't just ramble. This is all connected. It's a system. It's such a system that everything is always changing. What's really changing is the impending physician tsunami. Yes, there are three things causing the impending physician tsunami. The physician's shortage. Now, it's debatable, a good forum discussion, because some people say there is not a physician shortage, but there is. It's a problem with number. It's mainly a problem with location. Most new doctors want to work in a big city. I was weird. I worked in rural hospitals quite often, although now I work in Dallas. They want to go into specialty practice, even though one half are going into primary care. It's only because that's where the residency positions are. FYI, residency positions are funded by the United States government, by the way. Mid-level providers, the family nurse practitioner and the physician assistant. These are people that do essentially the same thing as physicians. I give lectures to a lot of mid-levels and family nurse practitioners because there is a physician shortage. We're going to talk about that. There's another predicted Alzheimer's disease crisis we'll talk about. And then, of course, there's the millennial crisis. If you're ages 33 to 40, uh-oh. So first, let's talk about the physician shortage. Whew. We said the average age was 55, remember? Yes. We're retiring sooner. We're a little burned out. A lot of physicians retire at age 60. Ooh, that's scary. No, I'm not going to. I will work till I drop. I'm a little bit crazy, remember? You saw my pictures. The male-female ratio, as I mentioned briefly earlier, is 1-to-1 entering the pipeline out of those 150,000 people or so. But the practice is not 1-to-1, as we said. Location, city versus rural. They want to go in the city. We know this. But they also want to become specialists, because if you have a procedure like a cardiology procedure, or if you can replace a hip or a knee, that's where the money is. You do neurosurgery, that's where the money is. Money is in procedures. Psychiatrists don't make as much. The pediatricians don't make as much. And the metric for you to remember is, in the U.S., we have approximately 2.6 physicians for every 1,000 people in our country. So there's a population driver. What's most interesting on a global level, for those MBAs who are more globally focused, there are some countries like Cuba. Yeah, Cuba has 8.4 physicians per 1,000 Cubans. Other countries like Malawi in Central Africa, one of the places I've always wanted to go, it's on my bucket list. Great country. It's landlocked, by the way. Zero doctors per 1,000. I mean, they barely have a doctor in that Malawi. And they have a lot of sick people in Malawi, too. So the physician shortage is very debatable. It's going to impact your future as an MBA leader of our healthcare system, the complex healthcare system. So keep in mind that there probably is a shortage, but it's also a greatly debatable issue, and no one really can predict the future very well. Well, I can't. I can predict the future. I can predict your Alzheimer's future. One of my passions is studying Alzheimer's disease. I have a telehealth wellness program. It's called the Bredesen Protocol. Alzheimer's disease. Right now, about 5.5, 6 million people have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is where you have dementia, you lose your memory, you lose your ability to process data, you lose your ability to make decisions. You cannot go through the activities of daily living very well. You can't pump gas, you can't do credit cards, you can't do checks, you can't do anything. That's Alzheimer's disease. Here's the problem. Number 2, it's predicted that about 20 to 40 million Americans will have Alzheimer's within the next 10 to 15 years. Do you just see what I said there? 20 to 40 million? It is truly the most costly disease process known. Here's why. 2 reasons. Number 1 reason, you can't work if you have Alzheimer's disease. Well, maybe you could do a course like this. I'm just joking. You can't work. Alzheimer's patients can't work. Therefore, they lose income. The second reason is they cannot take care of themselves. So they need a caretaker. Sometimes it's a spouse, but then the spouse can't work. Sometimes it's a nurse of some sort or a medical assistant of some type, but then that costs money. Then they go into some type of assisted living facility. As they get worse, they need nursing care. It goes on and on. I don't want to get carried away with Alzheimer's disease, although that is my passion and specialty. I know everything there is to know about Alzheimer's disease, and which, by the way, is curable and reversible. Do not believe the newspapers of which you read, but that's my own personal belief, although it's science also proves my belief. One of my missions in life is separating hypocrisy from science. What is scientific truth and what is hypocritical? And we can cure Alzheimer's, but here's the problem. Whether it's Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, these are chronic diseases of aging. Did you know that your overall health begins to decline at age 27? This is science talking to you. This is not made up. What are you talking about? The brain finishes its myelination at age 26, and health starts to decline at age 27. And if you think evolutionarily, you can see why that happens. That's scary, isn't it? And you're going to hear more about that. As I mentioned already, we have 2 healthcare systems in our country: the allopathic system, 1 pill, 1 disease, 15-minute office visit, and the integrative or the complementary functional. That is functional medicine system, Institute of Functional Medicine, IFM, remember? They ask that question of why do you have a disease process? Well, when you ask the question of why, then you come up with prevention and treatment being the same things. And you can prevent Alzheimer's by treating it the same way. You can prevent heart disease and treat it the same way. You can prevent type 2 diabetes, the type that comes from lifestyle, not that juvenile that I mentioned with the DKA that I already talked to you about briefly. So this is some stuff to connect the dots of our complex healthcare system, the Alzheimer's tsunami headed your way. The third area that's going to impact your future as an MBA is the millennial crisis. Some of you probably are millennials born between 81 and 88. We already know that 1/3 of millennials have a condition now, today, that will reduce their quality of life and their life expectancy. It reduces both their health span and their lifespan. These 2 go together. The healthier you are, the longer you live. 44% of millennials already have a diagnosis of one chronic disease condition, whether it's cancer, cardiac, neurodiabetes. These are chronic disease problems. We also know that the millennials have a higher percentage in the population of migraine headache, depression, asthma, eating disorders. This is proven. We know this by surveys. And sadly, 1/3 of the millennials do not have a PCP. No, not phencyclidine. Primary care physician. I got to throw in a little humor here once in a while, guys and girls. You know, we don't know who's taking this class, so I'm winging it here. But 1/3 of millennials do not have a PCP. And my motto is, prevention is always cheaper than cure. Now, maybe I should have said less expensive than cure. Prevention is always less expensive than cure. So this millennial crisis is going to be a problem for the future MBA. Now this is an MBA course, and one of your mottos should be to follow the money. I think there was a movie about that, Follow the Money. And that's an interesting concept, to follow the money. But as an MBA, you are far more interested in that than I am as a physician who's practicing in an emergency room in Dallas. So the things you need to be interested in is, where does all the money go? Where does it go, that 3.5 trillion? These are just some recent statistics. Ischemic heart disease, that means any type of cardiac disease, 89 billion with a B. Hypertension, 79 billion. Heart failure, 33 billion. Well, if you add those up, that's your heart disease problem. That's a lot of money. Then diabetes, primarily type 2 diabetes, which is the adult onset caused by lifestyle problems. That's another 111 billion. Again, these are approximate, but they're pretty reliable. Don't remember the numbers. Remember the concept. A lot of money, diabetes. Then anxiety disorders. Yeah, anxiety, 42 billion. Depression, 68 billion. And migraines, 14 billion. Now, the take-home point here is at the last part of this slide. All of these above problems are preventable and treatable. Yes, I will repeat that. Preventable and treatable with lifestyle interventions. Exercise, nutrition, stress reduction, sleep, avoidance of toxins, etc., etc., etc. This is the Institute of Functional Medicine that I mentioned to you, the integrative approach. This is true, this is science, this is fact. You can't argue with these data. The word data, by the way, is plural. With these data. Do not ever say to me this data. No, it's these data. I'm trying to give you some of my insights on how obsessive compulsive OCD I am. These data. Sorry, we're almost to the end of this PowerPoint. National health expenditures, as you can see, yes, as you can see from this slide here, continue to go up. The last 3 years, 2022, 23, 24, are approximation projections at the end. But basically, it's going up more and more. It's 20% of our GDP. I still think it's more, but you can see how it's doing. So that's the concept to remember. And if you extrapolate over from the year 2021, you can see the $4 trillion on the left-hand, what's that, XY axis thing. That's a lot of money, folks. It's really sad. Something needs to be done. These are data from the American Hospital Association. This is reputable stuff. The distribution of the money. Yeah. You can see physicians there. They have 27%. It's about 20 to 30%. Again, it's all somewhat approximate. The big one is hospitals, 34% in hospitals. And then it gets divvied out between prescription drugs, etc., long-term care, administrative. I thought administrative should have been higher, but it's not. I always say it's higher, but it's not. It's sad. This is a good take-home slide. Don't remember the numbers. Numbers are approximations. It's the take-home concept. Physicians this week. Next week, week 3, I'm going to talk about hospitals. And then we'll get into the pharmacies and the insurance and the other avenues that take money out of the system. So this week it's 27%. And there's a web link there that comes out of your required readings this week. There are quite a few. This is 2016 data, so it's of course changed by now. So how are we doing? That's a good question. Yeah, we spend all this money. Number one of the world. The United States is number one in something. It's spending money on people. And we're ranked 42 in the world on wellness. Wait a minute. This is why we need this course 5420. We need you to fix this. We cannot spend the most money in the world and be ranked number 42 in the world. This is insanity. This is driving me crazy. We're not doing well. We have great technology. Remember, I said when I went to Europe, everybody thought we had the greatest healthcare system. We do have great technology. I love it. Robotics, CT scans, SPECT scans. These are single positron emission computer tomography with technetium-99 scans. See blood flow in your brain. But we're ranked 42nd. We're ranked 42 in the world. I mean, yeah, this is insanity. We need MBAs to fix this. Please, please take this course seriously. Take what Dr. Ron is telling you seriously. This is my passion. Yes, I want it to be your passion. Come on. How sick are we? Well, I can tell you how sick we are. 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese. We measure this with the BMI, your body mass index. We measure how tall you are, how much you weigh. We throw it in the formula. I'm not going to give you the formula. You're not a doctor. I know the formula. 2/3 of Americans are overweight and obese, and it's going into childhood obesity. You've read about it. That's why you're in this healthcare field. Over 40% of Americans have at least one chronic disease, and greater than 50% have multiple diseases. And the average American over age 65 takes 5 prescription medicines. Remember, yes, we advertise on television along with New Zealand. I would love to know how many prescription medicines old people in New Zealand take, where they advertise on television also. I really would. That'd be great. This is part of our problem right here. Well, our real problem is that sickness leads to death. Now, these data from 2020 by JAMA, published in May, it's very reliable, I think. Although, as I get older, I question all data. Total deaths in America, pretty stable usually, about 3 million. Year 2020 was 3,358,814. How do they know that? But that's the data. Heart disease killed about 690,000. Cancer killed another 600,000. So those are the big killers. And then COVID-19 in the year 2020, we think killed 345,000. Again, very debatable numbers depending on which conspiracy theory you might believe in. But these are the American Medical Association data. Unintentional injury, 192,000. That's incredible. I mean, that's car wrecks and guns and things like that. Strokes kill 160,000. Here's the one that really surprised me, although I knew it. Chronic lower respiratory infections like pneumonia, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, 151,000. There's my specialty, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is only killing 133,000, but as you now know, it's going to increase big time when that tsunami hits. It goes on and on. Diabetes, type 2. Yeah, type 2 only kills another 100,000. And it goes on and on. I'm a very depressing person, and I don't mean to be. I really don't, but I'm really not. But I think as an MBA, you should at least have exposure to this type of problem that we have in America. All these different deaths that we have. It's really sad. But I only put them there for your edification. And don't remember the numbers, just remember the concept. Heart disease, cancer, really the biggies. And we can fix that if we really want to. And that's where you come in, Mr. or Miss MBA. And there is hope. There's true hope. Now, this is a key slide. Truly a key slide. Some of you have probably heard of the blue zones. Blue zones are places in the world where people live a long time. They're called centenarians. They live over 100 years. One of them is in Sardinia. Another one is in Ikaria, Greece. I've been to both of these places. Costa Rica is another one. I love Costa Rica. Another was in Japan, Osaka, Japan. And interestingly, another blue zone is in Loma Linda, California, because of the Seventh-day Adventists and their lifestyle. But when you peruse this, you may want to print this out for some of your patients or something, or clients that you have as an MBA there. America, we're ranked 42 in lifespan, as I just said. Sardinian Village, all the other blue zones, top 5. Our typical lifespan in America is really pretty good because, we're America. We live a long time. We keep people alive with machines. We live 80 to 84. But in the Sardinian Village, this is published scientific data, 100 to 110. Alzheimer's, chronic disease burden, we know ours is high, theirs is low. Alzheimer's, we're over 50% when you're over the age of 80. If you reach the age of 80, if something doesn't get you first, you have a 1 out of 2 chance of having Alzheimer's disease. But guess what? Look at that Sardinian Village, below 2%. They don't have Alzheimer's disease. The old people out there, they're really sharp. I tried to talk to them, but they all speak Italian. Well, they speak a dialect of Italian. Italians can't even talk to Italians in these villages. Our stress level is high and that kills us. Our daily exercise level in America is low. And our quality of sleep is poor. If you don't get 8 hours of sleep at night, you're in trouble. Whereas the Sardinian villages, all the difference. Dollars, we spend a lot of money. We just went over that. Our life satisfaction, most scales, most surveys show we're low, but theirs is high. Our diet is processed food, and there's our problem, nutrition. Food in a box, food in a can, it'll kill you. We're not going to talk about that. That could be a whole nother course I could give you on the processed food industry. It's called The Food Fix. It's a book by Mark Hyman, MD, The Food Fix. You might want to get it if you're interested in food. Our family connections are low, but in Sardinia, Costa Rica, Japan, they have children living with parents, living with grandparents, living with great-grandparents. They have 4 generations living. That's fantastic if you think about it. That also keeps you young. And of course, our time spent with friends as we go through life is low. And the people in Costa Rica, if you ever go down there, you'll see they're sitting around the table. They're doing the same thing in Sardinia because each village has its dialect and they can talk to each other there. So the Sardinian people, American people, the Costa Rican people, the American people, they're all different. But the current global life expectancy is 76 for women and 70 for men globally. So out of the 7.8 billion people on our globe, our planet now, there are only about 300,000 or 0.004% centenarians living today. But here's the problem, or the question, I guess, more of the question. If a few can do it, if those 300,000 can do it, that very small percentage, why can't everyone else do it? In other words, can the U.S. healthcare system improve on this? Or is it all lifestyle driven? Well, I think it's all lifestyle driven. We just showed you in the last slide that you printed out for your clients. How much can we extend our health span and our lifespan? And this week's readings, you're going to come across the bearded gentleman, Aubrey de Grey. Oh, what a fabulous guy. He does unending aging. I met Aubrey in Berlin at a conference several years back, because every year he gives his conference of unending aging. And Aubrey is a PhD genius. And you will like his lectures. He jumps around. He's very fast. But his concept is we can live a long time if we figure out the biochemical, the biophysical, and the physiologic parameters that on a cellular level, the mitochondria and the nucleus of our cells that will make us live a long time. So you'll run into some of that during your readings this week, and it's for your edification, and I hope it does help. But these are good forum discussion questions and good questions to think about. How much can our health span extend our lifespan? That's the question you really want to be thinking about in this course. The MBA student question is, and that's going to be part of your discussion question number 1 as a requirement, do doctors cure disease or do doctors just help patients manage their illness? Well, I think now, after this rather lengthy PowerPoint today. I didn't mean to go that long again. I promise I will shorten these in the future because it's a little too much information, I think. That's a great forum discussion question. Do doctors cure it, or just manage it? I'm looking for number one, the cure. I don't want to just manage my illness because then I'll still die prematurely. And as my candle now gets shorter as I get older, I really want Aubrey de Grey to come up with some great solutions. So come on, Aubrey. Come on, MBA students. Let's talk about this in the forum. Forum discussion. Question number one. I did promise you doctor's income earlier, and that's another good question. Is the doctor's income the problem or the solution? In aggregate, that chart that we had earlier showed 27%. So in aggregate, it's 20 to 30% of healthcare costs. But it's variable depending on the specialty. Remember the American specialty boards? If you're a plastic surgeon, on this survey, they make the most at $526,000 a year. That's insanity. I don't even have $526,000 to my name. No, I'm kidding. The orthopedic surgeries do really well. Cardiology, because they have a procedure, does well. Urology does well. All these people. But look how it drops off when you start getting down to internal medicine, down to $248,000. That's still a lot of money. My specialty, emergency medicine, $354. Now, I don't make anywhere near $350,000 a year. I do not know any emergency room doctors that make that much, but this survey showed that they do. So I wanted to give you that. It's a Medscape survey, 2021, and you'll read about that in your readings. So take all of these numbers with somewhat of a grain of salt, tongue in cheek, so to speak. It is a lot of money, but remember, there's that delayed. Let me rationalize this. We have all that delayed gratification, all those years of suffering, blah, blah, blah. Still a lot of money. And I'm not sure it's the problem or the solution. I really don't know the answer to this one, but maybe we should discuss it. What you do want to discuss, and we're coming to the end now, is the future. So some of the questions you can think about. I don't think we can discuss all of them. Pick and choose. Is physician training the problem or the solution? Is physician income the problem or the solution? Do patients, here's the big one, do patients have a responsibility to be part of the solution? Well, I think you've already figured out my perspective, lifestyle interventions, therefore patients do have a responsibility. That's what my website's all about in my practice of medicine. Do the 24 specialty boards of medicine have a responsibility? Because they're really the ones controlling what doctors do out there. Perhaps the various insurance plans could play a role in the future of medicine. What about hospitals? Can we, I go to the hospital. Ooh, I can't say which one. They don't serve very good food. I'll just say it's bad. But maybe they have a responsibility in other areas too. What about the pharmaceutical industry? You all know about the price of pharmaceuticals. It's outrageous in America. You buy your medicine in Canada. What's that about? Americans, we do all the research. Our government dollars pay for the research, and then we're forced to buy medicines from Canada, which, by the way, is illegal. Although you buy 90 days or less, the customs does not enforce that rule, that statutory law. There are many legal solutions in the future that you can come up with. Some will be statutory, some would be attorney-driven, what we call medical malpractice-driven. Some will become from the C-suite, from the CEOs, CFOs, corporate managers, and we'll talk about that. So this course, 5420, is a step in the right direction. By educating the MBA student, you get a insight of what's happening and what's going on in the future. So that ends week 2. That was way longer than we wanted. I'll have to shrink this next week, I promise, when we talk about hospitals. But physicians are the starring role. That's something I know about. And that's something we can discuss a little bit more, because my name is Dr. Ron Kapp, coming to you live from Santa Barbara, California today. I will be working in Dallas, Texas tomorrow, or maybe next week. And that, MBA students, is the end of the PowerPoint for week 2. And we'll call it a wrap, and hope some of you are still awake. Just remember, peptide is the solution to everything. No, I'm kidding. Hopefully a few good stories. Okay, see you next week. Bye.